Hello and welcome to the Child Psych Podcast. I'm Tanya Johnson, registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology, and mama to two beautiful girls. Today we are very excited to have Dr. Pat Ogden with us. A quick intro and then we're going to dive right in. Dr. Pat Ogden is really an absolute pioneer in the field of somatic psychology. She's the creator of Sensorimotor Psychotherapy and also the founder of the Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute. She's got more than 4 decades of experience of helping people through body-based approaches. Dr. Ogden has trained in a wide range of therapeutic methods, co-founded the Hakomi Institute, and taught at Naropa University for over 20 years. She's the author of several groundbreaking books, including Trauma in the Body, Sensorimotor Psychotherapy, and most recently, The Pocket Guide to Sensorimotor Psychotherapy. She's also got these wonderful cards that I use in my own clinical practice all the time called Body of Knowledge. I love them because I can pull them out according to what we're working on, and they're immediately applicable and really relatable. Pat, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so excited to have you. We've been at the Institute of Child Psychology. We've been huge followers for years.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Pat, okay, we're going to do a bit of a rewind, a few years, and then we'll kind of work up to children and families. Your work really has been pivotal in understanding how the body tells us stories. How did you even start? Where did this begin for you?
Well, how far back do you want me to go?
How long do we have, Tanya?
Well, a couple things come to mind. One is my mother put me in dance class when I was 7 because she knew I was going to be tall. I'm like over 6 feet tall. And she was an artist. She said, if you're going to be tall, you're going to be graceful. So I started this dance class, and I still remember, like it was yesterday, my dance teacher teaching us about this poise in our bodies and this, length, and she called it poise. And I just got it, and it felt so different. And I would never forget that feeling. And then later, it's interesting, this is a podcast on children and family, because in the 60s, I'm really dating myself. Right after college, I joined something called Teacher Corps here in the States, and I worked in the inner city project schools in the all-Black community, and there was a lot of trauma. National Guard were patrolling, where I taught, and the kids worked their trauma through dance and movement. And they taught me all these dances and these chants, and I could just see their little bodies, working with their experience. And it really influenced me. Yeah. And I was also, my own body has been such a resource for me. So I was very active as a child and got into yoga in, I guess the late 60s, early 70s, and started teaching yoga and dance in a psychiatric hospital in Tennessee. And the patients who did those classes seemed to get better. So that really piqued my interest.
It's so interesting. My understanding, Pat, is that your initial training was in traditional therapy, in talk therapy.
Yes. I mean, my first master's was in early childhood education. But then I did go to social work school for traditional talk therapy. In the middle of that, I met Ron Kurtz, who was
Everything changed.
Yeah, everything changed. He was my most influential mentor, my best friend. And he was the first person that I had met who thought the body could be significant in psychotherapy.
Yeah, it's just, Pat, I think it's so beautiful because I think it's just such a shift away from kind of seeing the head and the body as separate. And we know. And I think parents, when they really think about it, can feel that, of course, our body holds who we are, not even who we are, who everybody before us was too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And the beautiful thing about working with children is that they're just so eager to do anything with their bodies. So they're really very eager to work with movement or games that'll help them shift somatically as well as, psychologically.
Pat, talking about children, what do you think happens as we get older that causes us to kind of lose a little bit of that innate wisdom that is within our body?
Oh, I don't think we have to look very far to figure that out. I often think of little children who are put in classrooms at 5, 6, 7 years old when their bodies should be active. They should be learning through games and activities and movement and free play. But instead, they're sitting in desks. And I remember that as a child, and it was so hard to sit there. And you had short periods of, of recess. But I think we learned to disconnect and not trust from our bodies pretty early on.
Absolutely. And then it just continues. It really doesn't
And
stop.
it just continues. And I mean, our bodies we've had a love-hate relationship with our bodies for hundreds of years. I remember one client telling me that she had learned in church, but also from her parents, that her body was fodder for the devil,
Mm.
and that the impulses were going to ruin her if she let herself follow the body.
Pat, for people listening in who aren't familiar with sensory motor practices, could we kind of explain just a brief summary on what it is? What are we looking at? What have you devoted your life to with this?
Well, we're looking at how the shape and movement and posture habits of the body reflect attachment and trauma, attachment wounds, and resources as well as trauma. So, if a child grows up in an unsafe environment, their body's going to reflect that. They're going to be tight, probably, or they're going to be aggressive, or they're going to be collapsed. We're going to see the impact of that history on the body itself. And a child will modify their actions according to the receptivity of the people close to them. So, if a child reaches out, oh, I have to move my camera back. If a child like reaches out for connection and they're abused or they're criticized, they're going to stop reaching out. They're going to pull that reach back or just not reach anymore. So those patterns that we develop are a very quick inroad into unconscious imprints and beliefs and default ways that we've dealt with trauma and attachment wounds.
It's fascinating. So in order to start to heal with a sensory motor therapist, do children and adults actually have to have the words, or can we just work with the body?
Oh, you can just work with the body. That's the beauty of it. I mean, of course, we do have words and language, but it doesn't matter. You can work with a child who doesn't speak, or you can work with an adult who's gone silent, because it's all carried there in the body. I'm thinking of one session Bonnie Goldstein did with a little girl who had trichotillomania, where she pulled out her hair, and she'd been to all kinds of therapists and nothing worked. And Bonnie just tracked her movement with her parents, and this child was constantly pushing with her feet. Okay. So we don't need to know why, but we know that the kid's trying to do something. So the whole treatment was around providing opportunities where the child could do that movement, like in her car seat to have a pillow on the back of the seat in front so she could kick, and just to help her do that more and more and more. And she stopped pulling her hair. Now, we don't know why, but there was some intelligence there in her body that was trying to speak, So Bonnie just followed the natural wisdom of the body. And yeah.
Pat, it's so beautiful because I think, so often we want to come in with so many words and let's process this and talk it to death, where often our body knows what to do far quicker.
Well, it does. And I mean, that's one example, but you can also take a child who, habitually collapses and won't assert themselves, and you can play games and do movement that kind of reinstate a pushing motion or a defensive motion, so that the movement vocabulary starts to expand. Because if pushing away wasn't an effective action in your history, you're not going to do it, and you get molested or abused or criticized, and you're just not going to defend.
Absolutely. You learn to protect yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Pat, I think so at the Institute, our whole passion is to really empower parents to raise, our tagline is to raise a generation of children who don't need to heal from their childhood. So it really is around parenting and really looking at our old wounds and triggers. And what we hear again and again from parents is, I came into parenting with this one vision of what it was going to be like. But very often I've responded in a completely different way and I've felt triggered by parenting. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of triggers in the body and how it brings up old stuff?
Yes. I've often worked with clients on the same issue. when you have a child, the age as the child grows, the age that they are, it tends to implicitly trigger those imprints that you have from that age. So it's I think knowing that and being aware of it can really help. But as adults really need somatic resources where they can calm themselves down as well. I remember one client, she'd had a pretty severely abusive childhood that started when she was about 2. And in her therapy, when her little boy was around 2, she said, I'm afraid of my impulses. I'm afraid I'm going to hit him. She said, I just get so enraged. And I'm scared. And of course, she didn't want to. So she found a resource, which was just very simple, hands on the belly, hands on her heart, but that would calm her down. And I remember she said, I almost feel like I'm training an animal. Like I just do this. I do this all the time. And then when I start to get triggered, I do it and I calm right down. And she was really speaking to her nervous system, and her instinctive defenses that would come up.
What a beautiful image. I absolutely love that. And I think what a beautiful gift to her child too, to be able to go, hold on, I might not have the words for what's happening, but I can feel that my body is responding to something or reacting to something that's happening with this child in this moment.
And we have to be gentle as parents, because nobody's perfect. And I love your goal. And I do think that there's going to be issues no matter how hard we try, because we can't be perfect. And, like Ed Tronick says, you only have to be attuned 30% of the time for an attuned attachment. So
I love that reminder to parents. We don't.
I love that, right? Yeah.
And also, I always tell parents too that our kids, when we're messy and human, it gives them permission to be messy and human too. They don't need perfect parents. Yeah. We just need to be aware so we can go like, oh, that's something that's from my childhood. And how can I maybe react or respond differently next time? Pat, you often talk about, and I'm wondering if we could just recap a little bit for our listeners, just getting pushed outside of that window of tolerance, which I think happens for many parents. Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how we might experience that in our body?
Right. Okay. Well, when we're threatened in any way, we could be threatened by a crying child or a misbehaving child. It could trigger something in us where we feel threatened, and that will affect our arousal. Like if our arousal is in that window between these two parallel lines, we can stay pretty regulated. We can respond to the present moment appropriately. But if our arousal shoots up, our thinking brain isn't so online and we start to react. Steve Porges coined that term neuroception to describe the nervous system's ability to detect danger and life threat. It's really not cognitive. It really is a nervous system phenomenon. And if we feel threatened, our arousal will shoot up or it'll drop low. And especially when it shoots up, those are times when we behave in ways that we wish we didn't as parents, because we're reactive and we're not really thinking clearly. And the signals are first in the body. One of the things that we teach children and adults is to how to recognize your signs in your body. Does your body tighten up? Do you stop breathing? Do you start to collapse? Do your eyes get wide and your shoulders lift? And once you recognize those signs, you can have some agency over that arousal before it gets too extreme. Once it's really extreme, it's much harder to resource yourself and bring it back into a modulated zone.
Beautiful. So it's realizing kind of when we're on the edge of that window that we can pull it back in. And then once we're way out of it, then it's about maybe just getting through that moment and then coming back in and going, what happened here? How do I start to heal whatever that trigger was?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny as you talk about that. I can feel when I'm on the edges of my window by my heart. It goes very, very quickly. So that's always my kind of little trigger, like, oh, something's happening here. I might not be aware.
Yeah.
Something is happening in my body.
It's happening there. And your hand went to your heart right away, and so that might be your resource. I mean, if you were a client, that would be interesting to explore.
Absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so Pat, the other thing with parents is I feel like parenting is almost just this series of recognizing and realizing boundaries. There's boundaries everywhere in parenting. Can you talk a little bit to the body and boundaries?
Yes. It's funny that you mentioned boundaries because I would say of all the exercises, physical, activities that I've done with adults, I'm not a child psychologist. Of all the ones that I've done, it's the boundary exercises that they will want to practice with their children and that will I'll often suggest practice them with your children.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, because it's really accessible. Kids love it. They just love playing these boundary exercises. So, boundaries, they're just the ability to say no in a not in an angry way, not in an aggressive way, not in a weak way, but just a definitive no. So we'll do simple exercises like just practicing the stop sign, like just say no. And many clients are uncomfortable. They'll say, "Oh, this doesn't feel right." Because an action or setting your boundary often for a child, they often have the dilemma of setting their boundary and losing contact with their attachment figure, or not setting a boundary and keeping that contact. And I think it's a real dilemma in parenting and for children. And
Absolutely. So beautiful. So if we can teach the children and we can also teach parents who didn't have that experience of being able to put up healthy boundaries, again, that's how we start to shift some of those relational patterns that we see across generations.
Yeah. And you can really play fun games with it. Like, we'll have kids, well, and parents too, like sit on the floor and make their space. Like, this is my space. This is my boundary, like with pillows or ropes or scarves or objects. And then, the other person can come into the boundary, but the person inside the boundary gets to decide and they get to say no, or they get to say come in. And it's just a great thing to do with kids, both directions.
Oh, it's fun.
And to start to explore that it doesn't mean that, I don't like you. It's just like, no, I need my boundary. And then kids can construct their boundary and keep the parent out, which they love.
Oh, I love that. That's so fun. It's such a beautiful way to teach it because I think we teach boundaries, but often it's through words. And I don't think that that's how kids operate.
No, the games are much more, even for adults, I would say, like even standing across the room and doing a beckoning motion to beckon the other person closer, and then a stop motion to stop, and then a go back further motion, like just playful.
Oh, I love it. And as you're saying it, I can feel it as well. You can feel it. You can feel what would happen.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's great for kids and parents who've had trauma because you lose choice of who gets next to your body when you've had trauma. So it really is a great exercise to do with traumatized adults or children.
So traumatized adults, traumatized parents, Pat, I think one question that we often get is that when a parent has been through trauma, they often are really aware of being conscious of not wanting to pass it on to their children. For our listeners listening in, for our moms, our dads, our caregivers, grandmas and grandpas listening in, for those who have had a history of trauma and who still feel it in their body, where do they start to heal? How do we begin?
Well, I mean, it's obvious, but I'd say, you need to do some work, do your own therapy around it, because when you have to remember that trauma impacts the subcortical brain, and so we have these instinctive defenses that will come up without the modulation of the cortex. And I think that's what parents struggle with, trauma, who have had trauma in their history, because it feels out of control. Like these impulses just come up for survival, and they're not really regulated or modulated by our thinking brain. So I think that's where body therapy comes in. Like trauma first and foremost affects the body. So let's work at that level to develop those connections and, kind of reinstate some flexibility there on a somatic and nervous system level.
And I think that that's what I hear most often as you talk about those reactions that occur. I hear most often from clients and from parents is that it's within our parenting journey that we often discover what we haven't resolved yet. And we have those responses and those reactions where we go, whoa, I don't understand what just happened there. And that's often an indicator that we need to do more healing. And I agree, it has to start with the body first.
Well, it does. And I want to encourage, the parents who are listening, like don't blame yourself because you don't have conscious control over those impulses. Our brains and bodies are designed so that you don't have. So you go first to survival. So when there's a trigger, you might not even be able to identify the trigger, but you'll feel that arousal and you might take an action that you wish you hadn't done, later on. But it's the body's, we're wired for survival. So if we feel threatened, we will take defensive action.
Pat, for parents who have been through trauma and feel disconnected from the wisdom of their body, because I know that some people will be skeptical and say it's too, I can't go there. I'll start with the talk therapy. What would your suggestion be? How would you guide them?
Well, the first thing I would say is that makes total sense because the body's been the battleground. The body's a scary place for the traumatized person. It's not reliable. It does these things you don't want it to do. So you have to go slowly to befriend the body again and start to find its resources and discover how it can be, supportive, how you can relate to it. I mean, outside of therapy, I would just start simply like, remembering times that really felt good to you and how did your body feel? Thinking about, well, how do you feel good in your body today? Like what foods do you like to eat? Do you like to take warm baths? You'd like to go out in nature? And, those are all ways of honoring the body that we don't usually recognize.
I love that. It's like, as you're talking, Pat, it sounds almost like just a very gentle reawakening to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when people are ready, then looking for a therapist who is trained in really working with the body first.
That's what I would suggest. I mean, and a lot of traumatized people do that instinctively. Like they'll go get massages or, they'll do yoga or they'll do these forms of pure bottom-up therapy that can be really helpful. So you can also start there rather than with body psychotherapy. You could start there. But I would look for natural ways that people resource in their bodies. Like you, when you talked about your heart rate, your hand just went to your heart. Well, that's your body's wisdom right there. And everybody does stuff like that. You'll rub your legs, you'll hug yourself. Your body has these ways of trying to regulate. So I might suggest looking for those ways that you're already doing.
Oh, I think it's absolutely beautiful. Pat, in your own journey, how has this work changed how you relate to your body?
That's a good question. I think for me, I mean, I've always been so body oriented, like from little up, like being out in nature. I happen to be in the home right now where I was raised, and there's just nature everywhere. So it's very like immediate to me how I was in the woods, I was down by the lake, I was running on the golf course, I was climbing trees. Like it was my natural way to deal with the hardships of childhood. I think the work itself has just made me more aware of my own body as a laboratory, like trying out movements. And I always have something I'm working with, some movement or some expression, some resource that I work with myself. I think it's made me more conscious. But my body has always been a primary resource for me.
It's beautiful. As you're talking about your own childhood, I actually think about my two little girls and also how they deal with their world. It's exactly that. They're climbing trees, they're jumping, they're playing little streams. Yeah, and I think my hope for everybody listening in is that even just today, to just get outside a little bit and rediscover a little bit of that innate joy.
Yeah, that's a big loss that I know is troublesome to a lot of people who work with kids today, is that there's too much screen time, too much indoor time. I just couldn't wait to get outside. I didn't need any toys, but I don't see kids doing that these days so much.
Yeah, as we talk about that disconnection, it's on many levels, on many, many levels. Pat, before we finish off, I know you're doing some really great work with Dr. Bonnie Goldstein at the moment with children and families. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, Bonnie's a child psychologist, and we've been working together since, I think, 2002, 2003. And she's, of course, certified in sensorimotor psychotherapy, and she's in charge of our program for children, adolescents, and families. So we're just finishing a book right now in sensorimotor psychotherapy for children, adolescents, and families. We've written together. Bonnie's done train workshops all over the world on sensorimotor psychotherapy for kids and their families. And yeah, so that work is really kind of taking off. I think it's very needed.
Agreed.
Yeah. And we do have, I think it's September 18th. Bonnie and I are doing a just short 1 hour free webinar on this STAR protocol that we have to help kids like really take charge of their bodies when they're feeling bad.
Oh, that's
So,
beautiful.
yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. I'm excited for that book to come out. I know in my own work that'll be pivotal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pat, thank you so much for your time today. Just so much wisdom and just so beautiful. I absolutely love your message.
Oh, well, thank you too. It's lovely talking with you.
Thank you.